Is a DSLR the best camera to use to learn photography? Well, I was recently reading through an article online, and the article was suggesting that a DSLR was the best camera, and I thought that was interesting. And what I decided to do in this video is going through the points that it was making and share those points with you, and you can make your own mind up if you agree with them or not. If you really want to learn your true craft in photography, and a DSLR is definitely the way to go, which might not be the most trendy answer, especially because the internet and the world is awash with mirrorless cameras. But if you stick with this video, hopefully I can explain what I'm trying to tell you. Like most of us, I'm a real fan of a DSLR, and I've used DSLRs almost as long as I've used film SLR cameras. And that's the beauty of these cameras, because what they are is they're SLR cameras that have had a digital sensor added to them, and they still use all those wonderful optics, those wonderful lenses that have been designed over all the years, and those lenses are now able to capture those images onto a sensor rather than the film. And now, using a digital SLR, we can take as many pictures as we want without having to worry about the film processing and the costs and all those things. The other wonderful thing about the DSLR is that you look through the viewfinder and you see the world as it is. You see it through that mirror, through the prism, and it's exactly as you see it with your eyes. You're not looking through an tiny OLED screen. You're looking through and seeing the world exactly as your eyes see it. And that's the key part. That's the beauty of a DSLR, is that you know what you see is what you see through the viewfinder, and that's a really important thing. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video, enjoying my content, and you're not subscribed, it would be amazing if you would subscribe. That would be fantastic. It'd make my day, and it'd give me that feedback from you that you are enjoying these videos and that you're looking forward to more. I hope you do. Thanks anyway, and if you have already subscribed, thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate that. Now, let's crack on with the video. Of course, one of the good things about learning with a DSLR is that they're so abundant and they're so cheap. And what you probably find, a bit like me, because I've been loaned this camera by somebody who doesn't use it, you might have a parent or a grandparent or a friend that has got a DSLR. They bought it 10, 15 years ago and they used it twice, then put it in their loft or in the cupboard and they forgot it's there. And if you suddenly find that camera and you start using it as a new photographer, and you've got a ready-made camera that's probably amazing quality, much like this Canon 100D or a Nikon 3200 or any of those sorts of cameras, that you could grab one of those and use that to learn photography. And that's really nice, despite the fact that a lot of camera manufacturers these days have reduced the amount of DSLRs they're selling. They're not making the research and development that they used to on DSLRs, but they are very much still abundant and they are cheap. You can go online and get a second-hand DSLR at a really good quality, a really good price, and that makes it an entry-level affordability for getting into photography really good. And not only are the cost is low, but your ability to use these will be perfect as well. So I think lots of different reasons why these are really good too. Most beginners pick up a mirrorless camera, and that's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with mirrorless cameras. We love them. But when you look through a mirrorless viewfinder, you see what's on the sensor, what the light has been captured on the sensor, and that light is then processed within the camera body, and then it's then displayed on an OLED screen on your electronic viewfinder. So what you're actually seeing is a pixelated, rendered, processed view of the world, whereas when you have a DSLR that's through a mirror, through a prism, you're seeing the world exactly as it is. So when you're looking through an electronic viewfinder, you don't quite get that light. You don't quite see the light as it's really presented in the real world. You get a very good representation of it, let's face it, but you don't really see it as it truly is, where you would on a optical viewfinder. And that's the magic of using a DSLR, because when you look through the optical viewfinder, you see the scene. You see where the light is, where the shadows, the highlights. You see where the light's coming into your image much more clearly than when you would do if it was an electronic viewfinder. And I think because of that reason, that's the number one selling point, the number one reason why a DSLR makes a much better learning camera than a mirrorless camera. Of course, it's not just about the viewfinder, because on a mirrorless camera, you can look on the back of your camera, and as you adjust the settings, the light changes on the back of the camera, and you can see the light going dimmer or brighter depending on the settings. But on a DSLR, when you look into the back of in the viewfinder, or even on the back of the camera, you're still seeing the same view that your eyes see, and it's not changing. What that means is you're going to have to learn how to use your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO much more than if you would do if it was a mirrorless camera, because you have to use the light meter to understand what those settings are doing and then take your picture. And you learn from doing that. You learn from changing those settings and taking a picture. Whereas on the mirrorless camera, you just change the settings, use the dials, it sets it for you, and that's it, taking a picture, done. So you're not really learning anything. It's almost like doing it automatic. Whereas on a DSLR, you have to think about those settings before you press the shutter. The ergonomics of these DSLRs are also a factor too. They tend to be slightly larger than your average mirrorless camera. Mirrorless cameras have got a lot narrower because they don't have the mirror box in, and that makes the grip slightly smaller, and they kind of tend to be slightly less sort of big and less ergonomically in that sense. And because these bodies tend to be slightly bigger, that they kind of have a better balance with these bigger lenses, and that kind of works well. Whereas on a mirrorless camera, you'll get a similar size lens, maybe even bigger, because obviously the mirrorless cameras are full frame, and you tend to get a thinner body, and that kind of doesn't give it quite exactly the same balance as one of these DSLRs. So that's quite nice. And also the buttons tend to be nice and big on the DSLR, but they can be big on a mirrorless camera as well, in truth, but you still get nice big buttons to play. We've got a big body space to put the buttons on, and it works. And that's quite a nice thing if you're learning photography or want to easily switch your settings using those nice big buttons. Another really important difference between a mirrorless and a DSLR, which is important, is the battery life. So on a DSLR, you measure battery life in clicks. So you might get 800, maybe even 1600 images or pictures taken with a DSLR. You measure it in pictures taken in clicks. Whereas on a mirrorless camera, you measure your battery life in hours, because it has to feed that EVF. It has to, keep that EVS going so you can see through it. It takes in a huge amount of batteries. You find that mirrorless cameras' batteries are much bigger than DSLRs because they have to be, because they need that extra power. And you probably find you're charging that battery more and more often. And if you're new to photography, the last thing you want to be doing is thinking about charging the battery. You want to be able to grab your camera and go. Whereas on a DSLR, a battery might last you a week. It just depends how often, how many pictures you take. But it certainly will last all day. Whereas on a mirrorless camera, you quite often find that, as I've got today, I've got two batteries from my mirrorless camera in my bag. That's just typical. Whereas on this Canon 100D, I'm going to use one battery and it'll last all day and probably the next day. That's how. That's a really important thing. What's also nice on the DSLR, and what is good when you're learning, is you hear the shutter go up, you hear the clunk of the mirror go up. And when you do that, you kind of know that you've taken your picture. It feels satisfying, doesn't it? That clunk. Let's see if I can do it on here. Don't know if you can hear this, but it's on the 2-second timer. You can hear that clunk go up, and it is very satisfying. We don't get that on a mirrorless camera. We get a noise, but you don't get that clunk. The final point I want to make is really just coming back to the viewfinder, because that's the key. That's the key difference. And on a mirrorless camera, when you look through that viewfinder, it's just cluttered with stuff. You've got a histogram, you've got all sorts of settings that appear in your screen. There's all sorts of stuff all over the place. Whereas when you look through your DSLR, you've just got a basic window. You can see the world as it is, and you're not distracted by all these sort of electronic things that are in your way. And because of that, you're focusing on the image. You're not focusing on the blinky lights that are telling you that the highlights are blown out, etc., or anything else. You're just focusing on the image. And I think that is for someone that's learning, I think that's a really important thing to understand. The image you're taking, that's the most crucial part, and you're seeing that image as it really is without any distractions. And I think that's quite a good thing a good takeaway from this video in a way. I think this video's turned into a mirrorless versus DSLR debate, and really that's not what I was trying to aim at. As I said right at the start, it's really about trying to explain why a DSLR would be a really good choice for a beginner to learn their craft. And hopefully the points that the article made and that I've also found out as well, sort of explain that to you and you understand. And I think a lot of these things are true. A lot of these things actually work. And I think it's probably a good option to get a DSLR rather than a mirrorless camera to learn photography. Thank you very much indeed for watching. I know this video's probably a bit more of an opinion than anything, because we all have our views on DSLRs and mirrorless. And the point I was trying to make in the video is that a DSLR would be a good camera to use to start photography, to learn your craft, to learn those settings, to understand the light, to understand where the light's coming from, and how it looks inside the camera before you click the button. That's kind of the point I was trying to make, and I think that's the point that the article was trying to make. I hope I've been able to do it the justice it deserves. If you have enjoyed this video, I would be really, really pleased if you would give it a like. That would be amazing. Once again, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheerio.